Hello dear. How are you?
I am fine.
Explain family.
Kipsakis, also spelled Kipsaki, or Kipsiji, erroneously called Lumbwa, largest ethnic group of the southern Nilotic Kalenjin language group. They occupy the highlands around the town of Kericho in southwestern Kenya. Like other Nandi speakers, they originated in the highlands north of Lake Rudolph, Lake Turkana, and moved southward at least 1,000 years ago. In the early 20th century, British settlers took over large tracts of Kipsakis' lands. Kipsakis were encouraged to stay as resident laborers in exchange for obliged, paid labor. Some sought work on white-owned plantations elsewhere in Kenya. In later colonial times, Kipsakis turned from communal farming to individual land tenure. Cash crop cultivation of tea, pirith rum, corn, maize, and some coffee, and the sale of milk and other cattle products. Cattle are the main interest of the Kipsakis. Cattle are milked twice daily, and they are bled with a miniature arrow. The blood is then mixed with milk for human consumption. Herds are divided among kinsmen, ostensibly to protect them from disease and raiding, but also to reinforce the social bonds between lenders and borrowers. Kipsakis do not live in villages, but rather are organized in hamlets of adjacent homesteads, called kakut, that serve as both political and economic units. Farming activities are coordinated through the kakut, although each family also has its own plots. Community leadership is provided by a council of elders, with members assuming particular responsibilities. British colonizers obliged the acephalous, traditionally stateless Kipsakis to accept chiefs chosen from among them and introduced a system of courts. Men and women participate in several age sets throughout life. Sexual prerogatives and various responsibilities are associated with each. Clans and subclans are based on patrilineal descent, although maternal kin are important in many circumstances, such as in obtaining bridal for marriage. Military units once existed that cut across other social groupings, and the title Arap that was once given to warriors now indicates the attainment of adulthood.
Explain more.
Students' writing connects them to their families and communities in diverse and creative ways. Families can support and provide experiences for their children to write about, and they themselves can participate in the story process by being storytellers or audiences. Children love to listen to stories, sharing time and family history with the parent or grandparent who tells them. Listening to these stories, children learn the structure of narratives and the many ways of relating meaningful and engaging thoughts and events. Middle school teacher Priscilla Kelly, 1993, relates how allowing her students to tell their families' stories inspired not only their writing, but wide-ranging research projects. The first time I assigned the biographies, I envisioned students researching a notable person, probably someone unrelated to themselves. You can imagine my surprise when at least 2/3 of the class chose to write about members of their own families. I was horrified since each student presents a 20-minute oral report about her biographical subject. How many grandmothers could we stand to hear about? How wrong I was. First, I was and continue to be amazed at the relatives that my students have. They come with stories that amaze, complete with documentation in old pictures, diaries, awards. I ask them to read at least one book that will familiarize them with the context of their subject's life. What children can learn of history and themselves by talking to their families is beautifully evoked in Christopher Paul Curtis's afterword to his popular children's book, Bud, Not Buddy, a story about a young boy making his way through Depression-era Michigan in search of his father. Curtis, 1999, says, "Much of what I discovered about the Depression I learned through research in books, which is a shame. I didn't take advantage of family history that surrounded me for many years. I'm afraid that when I was younger and my grandparents and parents would start to talk about their lives during the Depression, my eyes would glaze over and I'd think, oh, no, not those boring tall tales again. Now I feel a real sorrow when I think of all the knowledge, wisdom and stories that have been forever lost with the deaths of my grandparents." p. 242. He urges young people, go talk to grandma and grandpa, mom and dad and other relatives and friends. Discover and remember what they have to say about what they learned growing up. By keeping their stories alive, you make them, and yourself, immortal.